Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? Good morning. The devotional today will be led by Representative Kirk White of Bethel.
Good morning. When I first joined the House, I was mystified and enthralled by a number of the customs, rules, and traditions that we observe in this body. The notion that a member has to stand to speak to the speaker. The notion that we have these things called sight lines, where someone can't pass between someone who's risen and speaking and the speaker. This idea that when we debate through the speaker. And a whole bunch of others, not the least of which is the question that came to my mind is, what does a gavel have to do with presiding and governing? Why is a construction tool important? How did that get in there? And so I went looking for some answers. When our country and our state were first founded, the formulators of this brand new system had to rely on structures and procedures that they were familiar with. Many of those men, from John Hancock, and even the father of our country, who stands behind me, and also those Vermont founders, such as Ira and Ethan Allen, and Governor Thomas Chittenden, and a number of others, were all members of an organization that mandated that partisan and secular considerations be removed or curtailed from meetings so as to create a body that, quote, among whom no contention should ever exist, but that noble contention, or rather emulation, of who can best work and best agree. That group, the Freemasons, used Masonic quarrying tools and implements as their symbols. That's why the gavel's there. And this, my colleagues, is how we get a lot of these customs. All of these things around the lines and the speaking and all that stuff, those come out of this background that our founders brought into it. And the purpose of many of these customs, and in part of the purpose of the fraternity, is to increase civility of discourse in our meetings and in the world at large. To disagree agreeably. I'm certain that the need for more civility in the world is one of the things that we all can agree on. In honor of the roots of our procedural customs, I offer this devotional given to a Masonic gathering in 1814 in the town of Putney, Vermont, by minister and Freemason Clark Brown. O God, how closely hast thou connected us with each other? How intimately, how indissolubly interwoven our concerns, our sorrows, our joys together. No one can dispense with others. No one can be happy within themselves alone. It is thy divine will that we should consort together along the path of life, bearing mutually each other's burdens and facilitate the way to each other. That we should commute thy various gifts and blessings with one another, impart to others a portion of our substance for charitable and spiritual purposes, and mutually rejoice in the interchange of benefits. Do thou then grant us the understanding, the wisdom, the integrity and virtue, which in this respect we want. Do thou penetrate and replenish our hearts with generous and affectionate emotions and dispositions to serve and benefit others. And with that warm participation in the prosperity of all, which alone can confer a real value on social life. Let us more plainly perceive and prize this value and behave in regard to it as is agreeable to thy will and to our creation. I will end this devotional with a line from the charge given at the beginning of each Masonic meeting. Let the benign genius preside over our councils, and under her sway, let us act with the dignity becoming the moral character of our venerable institution. Thank you.
Please rise as Paige Connor Noisorfer of Brattleboro leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members, we have several House bills for introduction this morning. House Bill 491 is an act relating to requiring mileage reimbursements, introduced by Representative Campbell of St. Johnsbury. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H 491, an act relating to requiring mileage reimbursements.
Now the bill has been read a first time and is referred to the Committee on General and Housing. House Bill 492 is an act relating to setting the homestead property tax yields and the non-homestead property tax rate, introduced by the Committee on Ways and Means. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H 492, an act relating to setting the homestead property tax yields and the non-homestead property tax rate.
Now the bill has been read the first time and as a committee bill is placed on the notice calendar of the next legislative day pursuant to House Rule 48. House Bill 493 is an act relating to capital construction and state bonding, introduced by the Committee on Corrections and Institutions. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H 493, an act relating to capital construction and state bonding.
Now the bill has been read a first time and carrying an appropriation. The bill is referred to the Committee on Appropriations pursuant to Rule 35A. And finally, House Bill 494 is an act relating to making appropriations for the support of government, introduced by the Committee on Appropriations. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H 494, an act relating to making appropriations for the support of government.
Now the bill has been read a first time and as a committee bill, it is placed on the notice calendar of the next legislative day pursuant to Rule 48. We also have 5 Senate bills for referral. Senate Bill 47 is an act relating to the transport of individuals requiring psychiatric care, introduced by Senator Lyons and others. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
S 47, an act relating to the transport of individuals requiring psychiatric care.
Now the bill has been read a first time and is referred to the Committee on Health Care. Senate Bill 73 is an act relating to workers' compensation coverage for firefighters with cancer, introduced by Senator Baruch. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
S 73, an act relating to workers' compensation coverage for firefighters with cancer.
Now the bill has been read a first time and is referred to the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. Senate Bill 99 is an act relating to miscellaneous changes to laws related to vehicles, introduced by the Senate Committee on Transportation. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
S 99, an act relating to miscellaneous changes to laws related to vehicles.
Now the bill has been read a first time and is referred to the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 103 is an act relating to amending the prohibitions against discrimination, introduced by Senator Rom Hinsdale and others. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
S 103, an act relating to amending the prohibitions against discrimination.
Now the bill has been read a first time and is referred to the Committee on General and Housing. Finally, Senate Bill 112 is an act relating to miscellaneous subjects related to the Public Utility Commission, introduced by Senator Bray. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
S 112, an act relating to miscellaneous subjects related to the Public Utility Commission.
Now the bill has been read a first time and is referred to the Committee on Environment and Energy. Members, we've received a request to read a House concurrent resolution that the House and the Senate adopted pursuant to the consent calendar. HCR 69 is a House concurrent resolution honoring former President James Earl Carter as a tireless international humanitarian and public servant. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
Whereas, as a former governor of Georgia and 39th president of the United States, Jimmy Carter's place in our nation's history is assured. And whereas his post-presidential years, longer than any of his predecessors, reflect the deep religious belief of a devoted Sunday school teacher, as well as a humanitarian focus of his mother, the indomitable Miss Lillian, who in retirement volunteered as a Peace Corps nurse in India. And whereas Jimmy Carter never sought to monetize his fame for excessive personal enrichment, but rather he and his wife Rosalind still reside in the same modest Plains home they built in 1961. And he has embarked on academic, healthcare, humanitarian, and writing endeavors with a broad societal impact. And whereas in 1982, this now prolific author became a distinguished professor at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and established the University-associated Carter Center, a nonpartisan public policy center through which he and the center's staff have engaged in conflict mediation in nations ranging from Bosnia to Uganda, conducted over 100 election monitoring missions worldwide, led a campaign that nearly eradicated guinea worm disease, and vigorously promoted democracy and human rights. And whereas Jimmy and Rosalind Carter are passionate advocates for and have volunteered in 14 countries on behalf of Habitat for Humanity, an organization that constructs and rehabilitates affordable housing. And whereas, in recognition of his extraordinary humanitarian initiatives, the Norwegian Nobel Committee honored former President Jimmy Carter with the 2002 Nobel Peace Prize. And whereas former President Carter has decided to enter hospice care in order to spend his remaining time in contentment and peace, and his life of serving others as a model to emulate, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the General Assembly honors former President James Earl Carter as a tireless international humanitarian and public servant. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of this resolution to former President Jimmy Carter.
Are there any announcements? Member from Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the gallery and the balcony, we have 17 Vermont students from Roxbo High School and 15 Spanish students from Sapore Aude. They are part of a biennial exchange program between these two schools, which began in 2016. It is the Spanish students, the school's third trip to Vermont. With this program, they hope to seek the help of students to build confidence and curiosity and independence. In this way, they can usher in another generation of engaged citizens that are proud of their home and where they come from, whether that be here in Vermont or across the ocean. Could you please help me welcome them to the building?
Will the guest member from Bradford please rise and be recognized? Are there any further announcements? The chair has an announcement. Members, we have a joint assembly at 1 p.m. here, so we plan to break around 12 or 12:15. And after that, we will have our joint assembly, and then following that, 10 minutes after the joint assembly adjourns, we will come back into session to finish our business, if we still have business to do, and then caucus. Are there any further announcements, member from Bethel?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the balcony, I have two guests. They are Brian Locke, and with him is past Grand Master of the Freemasons of Vermont, Stuart Corso. And I hope that you will join me in welcoming them to this august body.
Will the guest and the member from Bethel please rise and be recognized? Member from Chittenden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As this year's basketball March Madness competition winds down, I'm not even going to bother to give you the standings individually because virtually everybody's bracket is busted. However, we are going to do an announcement on the winners next Tuesday at noon in the Cedar Creek Room. I hope you can join us. But I would like to call attention to the team, which is, for some of us, the only thing we have to look forward to still. The team rankings. it will be no surprise to any of you that House Appropriations, of course, is in first place. But we have some competition, and it's not over yet. The Legislative Spouse Team is in second place, and our Legislative Support Team is in third, and they have a path to victory. The other end of the spectrum on the team sport, our friends across the hall of House Education unfortunately have sewed up last place. And they beat out, to get to last place, they beat out the House Committee on General and Housing Affairs. So congratulations, House Ed. Anyhow, next Thursday at noon for the finale. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? Member from Wolcott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Older Vermonters Caucus will meet tomorrow at noon in room 270, and online we will hear from the Vermont Association, the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, orders of the day. Members, we'll begin with House Bill 102, which is an act relating to the Art and State Buildings Program. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 102, an act relating to the Art and State Buildings Program.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Up next is House Bill 125, which is an act relating to boards and commissions. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 125, an act relating to boards and commissions.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Next is House Bill 206, which is an act relating to miscellaneous changes affecting the duties of the Department of Vermont Health Access. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 206, an act relating to miscellaneous changes affecting the duties of the Department of Vermont Health Access.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Next is House Bill 213, which is an act relating to creating a study committee on mobile homes and mobile home parks. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 213, an act relating to creating a study committee on mobile homes and mobile home parks.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Next is House Bill 270, which is an act relating to miscellaneous amendments to the adult use and medical cannabis programs. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 270, an act relating to miscellaneous amendments to the adult use and medical cannabis programs.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Next is 291, which is an act relating to the creation of the Cybersecurity Advisory Council. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 291, an act relating to the creation of the Cybersecurity Advisory Council.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Next is House Bill 414, which is an act relating to establishing an unused drug repository for Vermont. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 414, an act relating to establishing an unused drug repository for Vermont.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Up next is House Bill 472, which is an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 472, an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Now we'll turn to House Bill 31, which is an act relating to aquatic nuisance control. The bill was referred to the Committee on Environment and Energy, which recommends that the bill be amended as printed in today's calendar. The member from Manchester, Representative Bongartz, will speak for the committee. Affecting the revenue of the state, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which recommends the bill ought to pass when amended, as recommended by the Committee on Environment and Energy. The member from Burlington, Representative Odie, will speak for that committee. And then carrying an appropriation, the bill was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which also recommends that the bill ought to pass when amended, as recommended by the Committee on Environment and Energy. The member from Underhill, Representative Scroll, will report for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 31, an act relating to aquatic nuisance control.
Member from Manchester.
Madam Speaker, on the one hand, this is a simple bill. It's a study. On the other, it's a very important bill because we're talking about the use of chemicals in the waters of the state of Vermont. Here's what's going on. We are using chemicals to treat aquatic nuisances in many of our lakes. The aquatic nuisances we're really talking about is Eurasian milfoil. Eurasian milfoil is in fact a disaster for our lakes. Once a lake gets it, it's very hard to keep it from spreading. It's awful. This is why we put money in the budget for boat washing stations to keep it from being introduced to lakes that currently don't have it. Section 10 VSA Section 1455 was passed by the legislature in 2009. It replaced a predecessor statute dealing with the use of chemicals in our waters. The Bombazine controversy has brought to light the need to re-examine the statute. There's a long history of conflict between the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Department of Fish and Wildlife over the issuance of these permits, frequently with permits being issued even when Fish and Wildlife objects. That suggests we have a problem. The committee also heard a lot of testimony to the effect that the public process needs some work. Madam Speaker, many of us on your Committee on Environment and Energy have reached the conclusion that the underlying statute is weak and actually has a bias toward chemicals. Thus, the fact of permits being issued over the objection of Fish and Wildlife. Using chemicals in lakes is controversial. It probably should be controversial. It's fair to say that as a society, we have learned the hard way to be more and more leery of chemicals. Over the course of the last 20 years, the department has approved permits with 2 chemical sets that, following analysis, are now disfavored. There's a new chemical now in use that we're being told is safe. The fact is maybe and maybe not. We don't know. We need to step back and look at start the process from scratch again. The statute, the bill kind of asks, should we be using chemicals in our lakes under any circumstances? If so, under what guidelines? And what statutory changes should we make to ensure that we're doing more good than harm to ensure a robust public process before a permit is issued? It's well possible that we decide the damage from milfoil warrants the use of chemicals. This is truly one of those times when we have nothing but bad options. But when we have a conflict like we have historically had between DEC and Fish and Wildlife, it's time for the legislature to step in, conduct a study, and prepare suggested statutory changes. The bill has only 2 sections, so the walkthrough is quick. The core of the bill is that we have a study committee with 2 from the House, 2 from the Senate, the Commissioner of Health and/or designee, a scientist from Fish and Wildlife, and a scientist from DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation. Sorry for the shorthand. So a 7-member committee to ask the questions about the efficacy, the safety of the chemicals and herbicides that we are currently using, and then to submit recommendations to the legislature. I won't read every bit of the charge to the committee, but it really is an assessment and with a focus, incidentally, and I mentioned it once, but a focus on process as well, a focus on substance and a focus on process, because both of those 2 things were called into question through the reams of testimony that we took 2 weeks ago when this bill was in our committee. So, and the second section just says that it's effective on passage. So, with that, I'll just give you the witness list. We heard from the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation. We heard from a citizen of Fairleigh. We heard from the sponsor. We heard from a member of the Select Board of the Town of Hubbardton, citizen from Heinsberg, a member of the Lake Carmi Campers Association, Policy and Water Program Director of Vermont Natural Resources Council, a retired teacher from Hubbardton, a member of the Lake St. Catherine Association, Earth Community Advocate and researcher from Burlington, Secretary, Agency of Natural Resources, a professor from Castleton, Deputy Chief Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel, Chair of the Salem Lakes Association, Director of Fisheries, Department of Fish and Wildlife, member of the Lake Beebe Lake Association, a citizen from Middlebury, Lakes and Ponds Program Manager, Department of Environmental Conservation, member of the Lake Dunmore Fern Lake Association, a citizen from Lake Bomazeen, the owner of Tom's Bait Shop, a member of the Lake Iroquois Association, somebody from the Lake Bomazeen Association, and a member of the Lake Hortonia Property Owners Association. This bill got some attention in its first form. So, Madam Speaker, that's it. It's a study with a report back to the legislature this December. Thank you.
Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, your Committee on House Ways and Means considered H31. The bill establishes a study committee, as you heard, to meet not more than 10 times about whether and how to regulate chemical application. Joint Fiscal Office identified reimbursements and per diems for 4 legislators as the only fiscal impact of H31. Thus, the bill is reported by the House Environment and Energy Committee has a de minimis revenue impact. The committee heard testimony from Legislative Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel. The committee vote was 11-1-0. The House Ways and Means Committee respectfully requests your support.
And now member from Underhill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Appropriations Committee wants to thank House Environment and Energy for bringing us H31 and providing us the opportunity to learn more about efforts related to aquatic nuisance control. Your House Appropriations Committee made no changes to H31. Your House Appropriations Committee voted favorably 12-0-0 to approve H31 as amended by House Environment and Energy. We ask for the body's support. Thank you.
Now the member from Castleton, Representative Stamis, offers an amendment to the report of the Committee on Environment and Energy. This amendment was emailed to members this morning at 9:03 by our first assistant clerk. The amendment also appears on the House Overview webpage. Member from Castleton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And for those that are interested in acquiring a paper copy of this amendment, it's actually right down here at the table as well, right next to today's reports. So, good morning, my fellow legislators. Jared Samus from Castleton, but in Castleton is also beautiful Lake Bomazene. Today, I would like to present the members of this body an amendment to H31. This amendment, in summary, is simple, temporary, and only involves one body of water in this state, Lake Bomazene. This amendment, as stated, does not affect any other bodies of water in the state and simply seeks to temporarily pause the use of all aquatic herbicides in Lake Bomazene for the term of the H31 study to ensure public safety regarding the prospective use of herbicides with locally sourced, collected data from Vermont sources. The amendment reads as following. Moratorium on herbicide application, Lake Bomazene. The Secretary of Natural Resources shall not allow the application of herbicide Proselicor or any other herbicide in the waters of Lake Bomazene until the report of the Aquatic Nuisance Control Study Committee required under Section 1 of this Act is submitted to the General Assembly and the General Assembly enacts legislation implementing the legislative recommendations, if any, of the Aquatic Nuisance Control Study Committee. I ask this body today for its support on this small temporary measure to help ensure the public safety of the largest landlocked lake in our state. In addition to helping restore public confidence and trust regarding utilization of our aquatic invasive management species programs. And Madam Speaker, I would also like to request a roll call vote for this amendment, please. Thank you.
The member from Castleton requests that when the vote be taken, it be taken by roll. Is the member sustained? The member is sustained. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. Member from Manchester.
Madam Speaker, the committee thanks the member from Castleton for bringing this amendment to our attention. We met quickly before the session, actually even during the session as it started this morning, and by a vote of 10-0-1 found the amendment to unfavorable on a straw poll vote. And I think the reason is that this amendment would have required a lot of testimony from people on both sides of the issue. We didn't approach the bill as a lake-specific bill, and this is lake-specific and would have required specific testimony to that effect. So because of that, the committee found the amendment unfavorable, 10-0-1.
The question is, shall the report of the Committee on Environment and Energy be amended as offered by the member from Castleton? Are you ready for the question? Member from Fairhaven.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Because there is a continuous discharge from Lake Bomazene into the Castleton River, which flows through Fairhaven and West Haven as it makes its way to Lake Champlain. The three towns select board, Hubbardton, Castleton, and Fairhaven, all three select boards voted unanimously to not have this applied to Bomazene's waters. So I will be supporting this amendment.
The question is, shall the report of the Committee on Environment and Energy be amended as offered by the member from Castleton? Member from Middletown Springs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition to this amendment. What it appears to do is to simply reinstate the moratorium that the Committee of Jurisdiction wisely dropped from the original bill. The only reason that I can think of, it singles out one lake out of 800 lakes in the state for special treatment. And the only reason that I can think of for doing that would be is if the lake is in crisis, as Lake Carmi was deemed to be several years ago, and there was a special program set up after intensive testimony, study, and proposals for treatment of that lake. My opposition to this is not based on whether herbicide treatment is good or bad. I will leave that to the study committee established in this bill. My opposition is based on the bad practice of singling out one body of water among hundreds in the state for special treatment without the study to support that special designation. Thank you.
The question is, shall the report of the Committee on Environment and Energy be amended as offered by the member from Castleton, member from Fairhaven?
Yes, Madam Speaker, the application permit proposed by the Bombazine Association is in, the application is in. So they could receive the permit to go ahead and apply the chemical to the water, which they want to do in August, and the study won't be back until December. That is the purpose of this amendment.
Are you ready for the question, member from Dover?
Madam Speaker, this permit is under consideration by DEC, who are also taking into consideration all of the input and sentiment and testimony from locals around the issue. The permit has not yet been issued. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? If so, will the clerk please commence to call the roll?
Andrews or Westford?
2 minutes. Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? Will the House please come to order? I would like to remind members that we are in the middle of a roll call vote. Members and guests are prohibited from using computers, phones, or any type of electronic device. Please refrain from the passing of notes and conversations during the roll call. When the clerk calls your name, please answer in a loud and clear voice so the clerk can accurately record your vote. The question is, shall the report of the Committee on Environment and Energy be amended as offered by the member from Castleton? Will the clerk please continue to call the roll?
Intriano of Orwell. Anthony of Berry City. No. Arison of Weathersfield. No. Arsenault of Williston. No. Austin of Colchester. No. Bartholomew of Heartland. No. Bartley of Fairfax. No. Beck of St. Johnsbury. No. Rebecca of Winooski. No. Byrong of Regents. No. Black of Essex. No. Bloomley of Burlington. No. Bongarts of Manchester. No. Boslin of Westminster. No. Boyden of Cambridge. No. Brady of Williston. No. Brannigan of Georgia. Yes. Brennan of Colchester. Yes. Brown of Richmond. No. Brownell of Pownell. No. Brumstead of Shelburne. No. Burdett of West Rutland. No. Burke of Brattleboro. Burrs of West Windsor. Buss of Woodstock. Campbell of St. Johnsbury. Canfield of Fairhaven. Carpenter of Hyde Park. Carroll of Bennington. Casey of Montpelier. Chapin of East Montpelier. Chase of Chester. Chase of Colchester. Chestnut Tandem and Middletown Springs. Christie of Hartford. Chena of Burlington. Clifford of Rutland City. Coffey of Guilford. Cole of Hartford. Conlon of Cornwall. Corcoran of Bennington. Cordes of Lincoln. DeMar of Enosburg. Demrow of Corinth. Dickinson of St. Albans Town. Dodge of Essex. Dolan of Essex Junction. Dolan of Waitsfield. Donahue of Northfield. Durfee of Shaftesbury. Elder of Starksboro. Emmons of Springfield. Farley's Rubio of Barnet. Galfetti of Berrytown. Garifano of Essex. Goldman of Rockingham. Ghostland of Northfield. Ghostland of Northfield. Ghostland of Northfield. Ghostland of Northfield. Graham of Williamstown. I'm sorry, Graham of Williamstown, thank you. Granning of Jericho. Gregoire of Fairfield. Hango of Berkshire. Harrison of Chittenden. Hedrick of Burlington. Higley of Lowell. Holcomb of Norwich. Hooper of Randolph. Hooper of Burlington. Houghton of Essex Junction. Howard of Rutland City. Hyman of South Burlington. James of Manchester. Jerome of Brandon. Kornheiser of Brattleboro. Krasnow of South Burlington. Labor of Morgan. LaBounty of Linden. Lally of Shelburne. Lalonde of South Burlington. Lamont of Morristown. Lanford of Vergennes. LaRush of Franklin. Levitt of Grand Isle. Lipsky of Stowe. Logan of Burlington. Long of Newfane. McGuire of Rutland City. Marcotte of Coventry. Maslin of Thetford. Matos of Milton. McCann of Montpelier. McCarthy of St. Albans City. McCoy of Pulteney. McFawn of Berrytown. McGill of Bridport. Mahaly of Calais. Minier of South Burlington. Morgan of Milton. Morris of Springfield. Morrissey of Bennington. Rowicki of Putney. Mulvaney Stanek of Burlington. Nicole of Ludlow. Knott of Rutland City. Noyes of Wolcott. Nugent of South Burlington. O'Brien of Tunbridge. Odie of Burlington. Oliver of Sheldon. Page of Newport City. Payella of Londonderry. Parsons of Newberry. Pat of Worcester. Pearl of Danville. Peterson of Clarendon. Pouch of Heinsberg. Priestley of Bradford. Rachelson of Burlington. Rice of Dorset. Roberts of Halifax. Samus of Castleton. Sakowitz of Randolph. Shy of Middlebury. Shaw of Pittsford. Sheldon of Middlebury. Sibilia of Dover. Sims of Craftsbury. Small of Winooski. Smith of Derby. Squirrel of Underhill. Stebbins of Burlington. Stevens of Waterbury. Stone of Burlington. Supernaut of Barnard. Taylor of Milton. Taylor of Colchester. Templeman of Brownington. Tolino of Brattleboro. Toof of St. Albans Town. Torrey of Moortown. Troiano of Stannard. Walker of Swanton. Waters Evans of Charlotte. White of Bethel. Whitman of Bennington. Williams of Berry City. Williams of Granby. Wilson of Linden. Wood of Waterbury. Burke of Brattleboro. Chena of Burlington. Lamont of Moorestown. Logan of Burlington. Mahali of Calais. Payella of Londonderry.
Members, please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yes, 24. Those voting no, 120. The nays have it, and you have declined to amend the report of the Committee on Environment and Energy. Now the question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Environment and Energy? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have amended the bill. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, member from Franklin.
May I interrogate the original presenter of the bill?
The member from Manchester is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, did you take any testimony from the Department of Agriculture?
No, we did not. Madam Speaker, we did not.
Member, can you move your mic closer? We can't hear you.
Madam Speaker, we did not take testimony from the Committee on from the Department of Agriculture.
It's my understanding that the Department of Agriculture approves the labels for these pesticides of this sort. Wouldn't it be appropriate to have Agriculture on the committee, or at least testify before the group if it does pass?
Madam Speaker, I would suggest it is likely that if the Agency of Agriculture had an interest in testifying before the committee over the course of the summer, that they would have that opportunity.
Madam Speaker, I was inclined to vote for this bill, but after the amendment to pause the use failed, seems peculiar to me that we'd have a study committee that was to look into the problems with the use of pesticides and then simply move forward with the use of pesticides. So I'm going to vote no.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Now we'll turn to House Bill 158, which is an act relating to the beverage container redemption system. The bill was referred to the Committee on Environment and Energy, which recommends that the bill be amended as printed in today's calendar. The member from Springfield, Representative Morris, will speak for the committee. Affecting the revenue of the state, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which recommends that the report of the Committee on Environment and Energy be amended as printed in today's calendar. The member from Burlington, Representative Odie, will speak for that committee. And then carrying an appropriation, the bill was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which recommends that the bill ought to pass when amended as recommended by the Committee on Environment and Energy, and then when further amended as recommended by the Committee on Ways and Means. The member from Underhill, Representative Squirrel, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H-158, an act relating to the beverage container redemption system.
Member from Springfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And backed by popular demand is an amendment to the current beverage container redemption system. We had so much fun with it last year. Madam Speaker, may I speak to the underlying bill as well as the amendment?
You may.
H-158 can be found in today's calendar on page 1318 for those wishing to follow. It can also be located on the Environment and Energy website, webpage by searching the bill number. H-158 is a strike-all amendment to Vermont's Beverage Container Redemption Deposit Law found in 10 VSA Chapter 53. It is often referred to as the Bottle Bill and was enacted in April of 1972 and implemented on July 1st, 1973. The fundamental goals of 50 years ago were to reduce litter, divert used bottle and can containers away from waste disposals into our landfills, and secondly, it incentivized efforts for consumers to redeem them and thereby supporting recycling efforts. Arguably, to date, we have accomplished those goals and have achieved success with the Redemption's recycling program. Those same goals remain in place today with H-158, adding the incentive of further reducing waste materials from entering the landfill. It increases additional clean materials into the recycling and reuse of container materials. With the emergence of recycled material industries, additional clean materials are needed, and the industry prefers bottles from states that have redemption programs as they are cleaner. Container recycling is a process of diverting materials from disposal and salvaging them to be remade into new containers. There are important benefits worth mentioning with recycling. A, recycling minimizes or avoids the use of raw materials in the production of containers. B, recycling is generally accepted as an energy saver and carbon emission reducer, as processing existing materials takes less effort than using raw materials. Recycling reduces the reliance on mining of raw materials, which requires additional energy and is more costly to process. Recycling provides materials to an industry that prefers a cleaner, less contaminated product. The fundamental goal in any recycling effort is to create a sustainable, closed-loop manufacturing process. This enables used materials to be collected and returned, where they can be made into new containers and used again. Under our current container law, recycled material, including glass, aluminum, and plastic cans and bottles. On a historical note, many towns hosted their own dumps, where our household and industrial waste materials were taken for disposal. Open burning often occurred to reduce the vast amounts of trash, and later landfills simply buried and discarded materials under piles of trash and earth. A side effect of these sites can include leachate and groundwater contamination and are regularly monitored today. Many of these town sites ultimately closed as open burning of trash became a thing of the past and the sites reached capacity. Town dumps were regulated by state laws and local zoning laws that restricted their existence and contributed to their closing. This provided opportunity for private landfills located around the state, where trash pickup businesses provided convenience to the consumer and transported the waste to regional landfills. Eventually, these regional landfill sites also closed to a point where we now have only one remaining operational landfill in Coventry. In 2012, the Vermont legislature passed a universal recycling law, which banned the disposal of recyclable materials. This included metal, glass, number 1, number 2 plastics, paper, and cardboard, followed by leaf and yard debris in 2015. A ban on clean wood followed in 2016, with food scraps coming on board in 2020. The Universal Recycling Law also required solid waste facilities and haulers to collect these additional materials. The Universal Recycling Law created an opportunity for material recovery facilities, known as MRFs, to open or expand and enabled trash haulers to offer residential and commercial properties the convenience option of a single stream collection and disposal system. Both redemption and single stream industries are vital to our waste disposable programs. One for those consumers desiring to redeem their deposit beverage containers and those who simply prefer the convenience of the blue bin system. MRFs and solid waste management entities, known as SWMEs, also collect and recycle other materials such as paper, cardboard, food packaging, tin, and aluminum food containers. Vermont also has a PRO programs for batteries, mercury thermostats, light bulbs, and electronics. A separate PR program for paint is also in existence. From the enactment of the beverage container law, business and employment opportunities emerged with redemption centers, transfer and recycling stations, and material recovery facilities. Beverage container deposit programs create many times more jobs than curbside recycling. Together, these industries employ hundreds of employees and offer Vermonters options to dispose of their waste. Excuse me, do I get my water bottle? Thank you. MRFs and solid waste districts have the option to increase tipping fees should their staff, wages, and expenses increase. And they have done that over the years. Redemption centers do not have that option, as state statute sets the deposit revenue stream. Recycling in any form is critically important because it diverts materials from our landfill. It can help to extend the life of our one and only operating facility. A related benefit is it helps to avoid or postpone the cost of Vermonters of adding more landfill capacity or shipping our waste out of state when it closes. Too much of our waste continues to end up on our roadsides, streams, or simply tossed into the trash, where it is transferred to our landfill. Many consumers don't see the value of recycling and therefore opt to trash these containers. A container deposit system is an incentive to redeem them. Recycling aligns itself well with an old Vermont conservation adage that originated around the time of the Great Depression. Some say it's attributed to Calvin Coolidge. And that message is, and I quote, "Use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without." End of quote. This quote fits right into a recycling program and material reuse efforts. The original bottle bill of 1973 covered containers for beer, carbonated soft drinks, and mixed wine drinks. This was a time before plastic water bottles existed. In 1991, Vermont's bottle bill was amended to include liquor bottles. Who would have thought back in 1973 that we would be purchasing water in plastic bottles? Madam Speaker, H158 will add PET and HDPE materials used for water bottles, sports drinks, and various other beverages. Various definitions will be explained later in the bill explanation. H158 will also add glass wine bottles into the redemption program. The redemption system requires a deposit on the covered beverage containers, and that amount is paid, transferred, and refunded at various points as follows. When the manufacturer distributor delivers the beverages, they charge retail stores for the deposit, and the manufacturer holds the nickel. Retail stores charge the consumer for the deposit, which makes the retailer whole. Consumers receive their deposit back when they return the clean containers to a redemption facility, where the consumer is made whole. Containers are then returned to the manufacturer by a producer responsibility organization, pickup and transport entity. The manufacturer distributor pays redemption centers for the deposit to make them whole. The manufacturer also pays the redemption centers a fee for handling, collecting, sorting, and packaging the containers for pickup. Therefore, the cost to retailers and consumers would be zero through the redemption system. The bottle bill has previously, the bottle bill has been responsible for recycling over 10 billion cans and bottles in Vermont, thereby keeping them out of the landfills. However, the handling fees have remained the same over the 50 years since the inception of the deposit redemption system. What other industry has maintained a 50-year-old revenue stream? The only revenue increases a redemption can realize is to handle more containers, but staff wages and center expenses have increased substantially over the 5 decades. The handling fee has remained constant at 3.5 cents for a commingled container and 4 cents for a non-commingled container. H-158 would increase the non-commingling fee to 5 cents, effective on passage, and would provide immediate relief to the redemption centers. H-158 maintains the same deposit amounts that are in place today for containers currently covered. For beer and non-alcoholic containers, it remains 5 cents. For alcoholic spirits containers, deposit remains 15 cents. The deposit fee for the water bottles and other beverage containers proposed in this bill will have the same 5-cent deposit. Wine bottles would be set at 15 cents, similar to spirit bottle deposits. The smaller 50-millimeter liquor bottles, often referred to as nips, and the larger containers are not included in this bill. They're exempt. H-158 does contain an automatic escalator of 5 cents for either of the 3 beverage categories, liquor, non-alcoholic beverage, or wine, should redemption participation rates not reach specific goals established in the bill. I'll explain a little more about that when I get to the bill-by-bill sections. The amendments in today's calendar will address the automatic escalator. This, by the Ways and Means. H-158 requires that manufacturers apply to the ANR for a producer responsibility stewardship program by January 1st, 2024, and it's to be submitted for approval by October of that year. The PRO has several requirements that I will refer to in the bill section explanation. This will shift the redemption program responsibility from the ANR to the new manufacturer's PRO program. ANR will maintain oversight of the PRO effectiveness. For their efforts, H-158 proposes that the PRO would keep 50% of the unredeemed bottle deposits, typically referred to as sheets. By requiring the manufacturers to expand redemption center convenience throughout the state, this would partially compensate the PRO by enabling to retain 50% of the sheets starting January 1st, 2026. This is seen as a cooperative approach with the business community to stand up the new program. It's Springfield water, by the way. And the added location and pickup requirements that are going to be required. Currently, the sheets are paid to the state for the Clean Water Fund. Retain that thought. The House Ways and Means Amendment also addresses the sheets. The enhanced container material deposits added by H-158 would go into effect on January 1st, 2027. The 2-year delay will provide ample time for manufacturers to update the labels and exhaust any existing inventories. And it was suggested and recommended by ANR to provide that delay. Madam Speaker, I will now review the section by section of H-158. As previously mentioned, the bill can be seen in today's calendar on page 1318 and on the committee's webpage under the bill heading. Section 1 amends 10 VSA Chapter 53, which is the beverage container redemption. Subsection 1521, number 1, amends the definition of beverage to read, all drinks in liquid form and intended for human consumption, except for milk, dairy products, plant-based beverages, infant formula, meal replacement drinks, or non-alcoholic cider. 1521, number 3, amends the definition of container with a focus on what the material is made from. Specifically, a container would now be defined as the individual and separate bottle, can, or jar composed of glass, aluminum, or other metal, polyethylene terephthalate, commonly called PTE, and high-density polyethylene, HDPE, or any combination of materials containing a beverage. Non-carbonated beverage containers with a volume greater than the 2.5 liters and carbonated beverage containers with a volume of 3 liters would be exempt. And I also mentioned the nips would not be included. 1521, number 11, adds a definition for cider, specifically to encompass hard cider. And 1521.12 adds a beverage called hard kombucha, which is a sweet tea and sugar drink, alcoholic drink. Technically, these products are vinous beverages as they are fermented fruit. If they are not defined and exempted from the vinous beverage definition, they would be subjected to the deposit of 15 cents instead of the intended 5 cents. 1521.13 adds a definition of plant-based beverage to mean a liquid intended for human consumption that imitates dairy milk, consists of plant material suspended in water, and the primary protein source in the beverage is from plant material or a derivative of plant materials. Plant-based beverages include, not extensively, or not all inclusively, but they do include beverages made from rice, soy, nuts, oats, and hemp. Plant-based materials are exempt from the beverage definition and therefore not subject to a container deposit. 1521, number 14, adds a definition of vinous beverage. It is largely consistent with the definition of vinous beverage under the state alcohol laws found in Title VII. 1522, beverage container deposit. Establishes a container deposit amount for vinous beverages at 15 cents per container. Liquor remains 15 cents, and the other beverages remain 5. It also requires the Department of Liquor and Lottery to report to ANR annually with the amount of liquor bottles collected and their redemption rates. DLL runs a program to collect redeemed liquor bottles and retains the abandoned sheets from these programs, from the bottles. That's different than the what's intended for the other beverages. So the PRO we're standing up and the DLL have separate programs. 1522B increases the non-commingling fee from 4 cents to 5 cents per container. It maintains the current commingling fee at 3.5 cents. These are the fees manufacturers or distributors pay to redemption centers or retailers for the collecting, sorting, and handling of the containers. Commingling means the sorting of beverage containers by material type and size rather than by specific beverage brand in accordance with the requirements of an approved manufacturer's agreement. So the intention there is to reduce the sorts. Commingling means the sorting of beverage containers by material type. I think I just read that, didn't I? Material type and size rather than, but yeah, I did that. 1522D, requiring redemption centers and retailers to redeem beverages at least 40 hours a week, is repealed because it is not being implemented nor enforced. Moving on to 1522A, rules is also repealed. The current beverage container redemption rule authority changes in the bill make the directives in this section obsolete. 1523, acceptance of beverage containers. authorizes a retailer to opt out or refuse to redeem beverage containers if a stewardship plan meeting the requirements of the Act has been implemented by a PRO in the state and the retailer's building is less than 5,000 square feet. So if there's a location for a redemption center in the area, or the retail store or establishment is small, they can opt out. 1524, labeling. Currently, all beverage containers subject to the deposit must include the word Vermont or the letters VT and the refund value of the container. Metal containers are required to have this information on the top. With more beverages being produced in aluminum bottles and other containers, it's hard to label on the top. So this allows a manufacturer or distributor alternatives to listing the refund value. They could list the actual refund value, i.e. 5 cents, the words refund value, or the letters RV. And this is important should the 5-cent automatic escalator take effect. So California has on their requirements that the bottles and cans label their CRV, and I have witnessed that myself. 1524A2 allows labeling on the top lid, the side, or in a clearly visible location on the container. 1524B requires each beverage container sold or offered for sale in the state has a deposit to include the universal product code and barcode. Each distributor shall provide the UPC and barcode as part of its beverage registration or within 60 days following March 1st, whichever occurs first. 1524D authorizes A&R to allow a manufacturer, distributor, or retailer of vinous beverages to attach a sticker to the container to meet the container label requirements. And this would be very helpful for existing inventory to be used up. 1527 is the penalty repeal. This section previously provided for a penalty of up to $1,000 for violation of the provisions in this chapter. A&R has authority to impose penalties under its default enforcement as authorized in 10 VSA Chapter 201. 1529-2, Redemption Center certification, repeals a requirement that a redemption center must participate in an approved commingling program if they redeem more than 250,000 containers per year. 1531, manufacturer participation in the PRO. 1531A specifies that no manufacturers or distributors may sell or distribute a beverage container in the state without participating in the A&R approved producer responsibility organization. 1531B requires manufacturers to apply to the Secretary of A&R to form the PRO by January 1st, 2024. 1531C, the Secretary may approve the PRO for a period not to exceed 10 years, provided that the PRO has a capacity to administer the requirements of the stewardship plan. The PRO does not create any unreasonable barriers to manufacturers or distributors for joining the PRO. It shall take into consideration the needs of small manufacturers that do not generate a significant volume of containers. 1531D. After approval, a PRO shall maintain a website that identifies their identity, the name of the beverage and container size that are covered by the plan. 1531E, if the PRO does not meet its requirements of the stewardship plan, A&R may dissolve the PRO. And in F, if no PRO is formed, A&R may require formation of the PRO or adopt its own stewardship plan. The A&R, this does also allow that if an A&R administers the plan adopted, the A&R shall charge each manufacturer the cost of the plan administration, including the various costs, and also a development assessment of 10%. These fees would be deposited in the Waste Management Assistance Fund, solid waste account, for the purpose of providing grants to develop markets to recycle materials. 1532A, the PRO shall submit a stewardship plan to A&R by October 1st, 2024. At a minimum, it must meet all the following requirements. Convenience of the collection. The plan shall ensure that consumers have convenient redemption opportunities. Shall take responsibility efforts to site points of redemption equitably across all regions of the state to allow for reasonable redemption access. Shall document how redemption service will be available to consumers as follows. At last 3 points of redemption per county. At least 1 point of redemption per municipality with a population greater than 7,000. And see how collection point sites will be sited in areas with high population density or located in designated centers found under 24 VSA Chapter 76. And the A&R does still have an opportunity to provide a waiver. Fair operation compensation to redemption centers. The plan shall satisfy all the following requirements. A, the plan shall describe how all locations that redeem beverage containers are fairly compensated for their participation. There shall not be barriers to the participation in the collection program, except for restrictions authorized by the Secretary. The plan shall describe how management and the sorting of containers at redemption centers is minimized. The plan shall document how brand sorting will be eliminated at points of redemption. The plan shall describe how materials will be picked up on a regular and timely basis. In E, the plan shall maximize use of existing infrastructure when establishing collection points. They must also education to consumers. The plan shall describe the education efforts to be undertaken to increase the redemption rates. Consultation with stakeholders. The PRO shall consult with stakeholders on the plan development and at least annually with stakeholders, including the agency, redemption centers, municipal and private recycling organizations. 1532B, no less than annually, the PRO shall report to the A&R. Name of the business and hours of participation of redemption centers, the amount in containers and tons, and material type of beverage containers redeemed by the categories. And the 3 categories again were vinous beverages, not including liquor because the DLL does that, and all other beverage containers. The location and amount of the beverage container material that was recycled, and what products the beverage container material was recycled into. Hopefully new containers. The carbon impacts associated with the administration, the cost associated with the administration of the plan, including cost of collection, management, transportation, and the amount received for commodities. Improvements made in that year to increase convenience for consumers. Efforts to reduce environmental impacts and increase reusability or recyclability. The PRO efforts to improve the environmental outcomes of the program and the educational materials and strategies the PRO uses, and any additional information required by the Secretary. 1532C, A&R shall approve a plan if the plan will maximize diversion of recyclable materials, provides convenience to users, and creates a more circular economy. The plan can only be approved for up to 5 years, not to exceed 5 years. 1533, program and fiscal audit. 1533A, beginning March 1st, 2030, the PRO is required to conduct an independent third-party audit of the stewardship plan, and every 5 years after. And shall make recommendations to improve the operation of the collection program. 1533B requires the PRO to conduct a third-party fiscal audit annually for transparency, to analyze expenditures, number of beverage containers collected, and the number of unclaimed deposits as well as redemption rates. That's important in the next paragraph. The result of each audit are to be submitted to A&R. So the beverage container redemption rate goal, that's required in the plan. And 1534A sets the state's goal for minimum beverage container redemption rates beginning on January beginning on July 1st, 2026 to be at 75%. And then you can see if you're following 80% by 2030, 85% by 2035, 90% by 2050. 1534B, beginning on July 1st, 2025, ANR annually reports to the legislature the current beverage container redemption rate for the liquor bottles, vinous beverage containers, and all other beverage containers. 1534C, beginning on January 1st, 2028, ANR determines that the redemption rate goal established in subsection A was not met for either of the categories for 2 consecutive years. The beverage container for the deposit shall increase by 5 cents. This is the inflator. So they have to go 2 years of not meeting the goal before this would take effect. The maximum deposit for any beverage container shall not exceed 20 cents for vinous beverage containers and liquor bottles, and shall not exceed 10 cents for all other containers. That's the 5-cent inflator. Within 1 year following the Secretary's determination under this section, manufacturers and distributors shall comply with the labeling enforcements of 10 VSA 1524 before assessing the relevant deposit established under the subsection for the beverage containers. So they get 1 year after the 2-year not meeting the redemption rates. 1535, rulemaking. ANR may adopt rules necessary for administration of the beverage redemption system. Section 2 and 3 amends 10 VSA 1530, C1, regarding remission of sheets. So Section 2 amends 1530, C1 to allow the PRO, beginning in 2026, to retain 50% of the abandoned beverage container deposits to aid in funding implementation of the stewardship program. Section 3, same section, 10 VSA 1530, C1, is effective July 1st, 2031, reverts back to 100% of the abandoned container deposits to the state. So basically what that is saying is the 50% allowed for the manufacturers would only be in place for 5 years. Section 4, ANR standard notice and comment procedures. Amends 10 VSA subsection 7714 A2 big C small vi Roman numeral 6 by adding the approval of the stewardship program under chapter 53. As well as the next one is 7714D, updates the technical correction to list the secretary from his or her, just a technical change, for holding public meetings. Section 5, Clean Water Fund, 10 VSA 1388, provides that 50% of their sheets shall be deposited into the Clean Water Fund. The effective date for Section 5 is July 1st, 2031. Waste Management Assistance Fund, 10 VSA 6618, would require the deposit of 50% of the sheets to the Waste Management Assistance Fund beginning July 1st, 2031. So that's after the 5-year program. The state receives 100% of the sheets. 50% would go to the Clean Water Fund, and then 50% would go to the Waste Management Assistance Fund. Section 7, systems analysis of beverage container system, requires the ANR on or before January 15th, 2025, to submit to the legislature a report on the total system cost of implementing the beverage container redemption system, including an estimate of the total costs and savings associated with the plan and the expended beverage container redemption system, an estimate of the impacts of an expanded beverage container system on the recycling system, to include the number of containers collected by the expansion, operational swings or operational savings on the material recovery facilities, the loss to material facilities from the removal of the containers, estimated impact on the tipping fees of each of the MRFs. think I'm almost done. An estimate of the cost of operating a redemption center and the other alternative points of redemption, and a recommendation on whether the handling fees should be altered or replaced with an alternative means of compensating the redemption centers or points of redemption. 4 is an estimate of the impact on overall recycling in the state and the redemption rates of beverage containers if the PRO implemented the stewardship plan were authorized to retain 100%, 50%, or none of the sheets. And finally, an estimate of the impact of the Clean Water Fund and implementation of the state's water quality programs and regulatory requirements if the abandoned beverage container deposits were not deposited into the Clean Water Fund. Section 8, repeal of beverage registration and redemption center certification with ANR. It repeals the 2 current statutes that require registration with ANR for the beverage registrations and repeals the requirement for certification of the redemption centers. That'll be covered by the PRO. Currently, manufacturers and distributors must register their beverages with ANR prior to the sale in the state, and the redemption centers have to certify by ANR. So those are the 2 sections it's repealing. In 2025, when the PRO is operating, a beverage cannot be sold in the state unless it is covered by the PRO's plan and listed on the PRO website. Registration will not be required with ANR. Similarly, the PRO must identify all redemption centers, and certifications is not necessary with ANR. Section 9, transition implementation. So when implementing the changes in this act, especially when the scope of the bottle bill is expanded, ANR will need some discretion in implementation and enforcement. Section 9 allows ANR to allow beverage containers to be sold or redeemed that do not meet labeling requirements, determine whether a beverage container is subject to the bottle bill due to the nature of the beverage or the composition or size of the container, and exercise discretion in the administration and enforcement of the requirements of the bottle bill. This discretion is not permanent and shall be repealed on March 1st. So this gives ANR some guidelines of the rules establishing around the transition from the current bottle bill to the new enhanced bottle bill. In Section 10, bottle bill recycling materials reporting. Section 10 requires manufacturers and distributors that are currently subject to the bottle bill to report recycling information to ANR in the same manner as recycled materials are reported to ANR by material recovery facilities. The information shall include the amount of containers in tons and material type of beverage containers collected, and the location and the amount of the beverage container material, and what products the beverage containers were recycled into. Section 11 is the effective dates, and I've covered most of them. The act takes effect July 1st, 2023. The only thing that would happen would be the non-commingling fee will go from 4 cents to 5 cents. And then Section 1, the expansion of the definition of beverage types goes into effect on January 1st, 2027. Also, requirement of the UPC label on containers shall take effect on March 1st, 2025. And some of that's currently now. You may have seen the UPC code on the label on the some of the beverages that you may be purchasing. Section 1, prohibiting the sale or distribution without participating in a PRO shall take effect on March 1st, 2025. Remittance of the abandoned beverage container deposit shall take effect on January 1st, 2026. Repeal of remittance of the beverage container deposits will take effect on July 1st, 2031. So this is when the sheets are split with the PRO 50%. That'll be amended by the Ways and Means. And then the sunset date on that in 2031, 5 years later. Section 5 changes the amount of funds deposited into the Clean Water Fund. Shall take effect on January 1st, 2031, as well as the Waste Management Assistance Fund, which takes effect on July 1st, 2031. So this is when the 100% of these sheets comes back to the state and then gets split between the 2 agencies. Madam Speaker, sorry for the delay. To summarize, H-158, the bill includes the following provisions. Its goal is to increase cleaner materials into the redemption program. It keeps more containers out of our landfill and off our roadsides. It increases the redemption center non-commingling fee to 5 cents from 4. Their first revenue adjustment since 1973. It adds in the PET and HDPE water bottles and other similar beverage containers. It adds in glass wine bottles at 15 cents and the hard kombucha and hard cider. It stands up a manufacturer's PRO responsibility organization stewardship program. And it shifts the responsibility from A&R to the manufacturer's PRO. It makes redemption convenient by requiring the PRO to add more locations. It allows the small redemption center stores to opt out. It shares the sheets with the PRO to help fund this requirement. It keeps the deposit amount at the current level unless the participation rates don't increase at the specific percentages over time. It allows for the manufacturers to stand up their program. It allows time for current inventory to be used up. It allows time for manufacturers to adjust labeling requirements. It maintains contributions to the Clean Water Fund. It would shift additional sheets, the 50-50 split between the Clean Water Fund and the Solid Waste Management Assistance Account, starting in 2031, requires a PRO to meet stakeholders and improve the current collection system, authorizes the A&R to create rules. Madam Speaker, what it does not do, H-158, it does not add in the 50 millimeter liquor bottles, commonly called NIPs. It does not automatically increase deposits by an additional 5 cents. It excludes milk containers and plant-based milk products, infant and infant formula, meal replacement drinks, or non-alcoholic cider. It excludes the larger beverage containers, non-carbonated above 2.5 liters, and carbonated beverages above 3. Madam Speaker, your Committee on the Environment and Energy heard from the following witnesses. I have a list here somewhere. Bear with me if you thought the report was long. We heard from attorney of Just Zero, staff attorney for Conservation Law Foundation, executive director for the Vermont Public Interest Research Group, director, Waste Management Protection Division, Agency of Natural Resources, the president of the Container Recycling Institute, environmental compliance officer for Casella Waste Management, the president of the Glass Packaging Institute, environmental consultant, the Beverage Association of Vermont, environmental associate, Vermont Public Interest Research Group, a partner with Calamont Beverage Company, citizen of Salisbury, general manager of the Morrisville Beverage, executive director of Vermont Conservation Voters, a citizen at Champlain Valley School District, director of the Public Policy and Communications for the Chittenden Solid Waste District, owner of the Putney Road Redemption Center, owner of Jimmy Quick Store and Redemption Center, owner of North Branch Vineyards from Montpelier, government affairs manager from Tomra Collectible Solutions, deputy chief counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel, should have named him first, by the way, lobbyist MMR, lobbyist Vermont Wholesale Beverage Association, president Vermont Retail and Grocers Association, as well as the vice president, government relations, Can Manufacturers Institute, the district manager of Northeast Kingdom Waste Management District, an owner of the Redemption Center, director of solutions of plastic pollutions beyond plastic. Madam Speaker, your House Committee on Environment and Energy voted H-158 out of committee favorably on a 10-1-0 vote, and we respectfully ask for the body's support.
And now the member for Burlington.
Madam Speaker, your House Ways and Means Committee considered the House Environment and Energy Committee's recommendation for amendment of H. 158 and further recommends as follows, with all pages found on March 21st calendar beginning on page 890 or on the House Ways and Means Committee website. In the first, third, fourth, fifth, seventh, eighth, and 14th instances of amendments are changes to make the legislation more clear. In the first instance of amendment in section 1522A, it replaces the way to describe the amount of the current deposit from not less than 5 cents to 5 cents. In the third instance of amendment, there's a change to a manufacturer or distributor shall pick up from retailers containers covered in this expanded bill, rather than possibly confusing may not refuse, so that legislative intent is clearly set out. In the fourth instance of amendment, in section 1424A, there is a change to the words refund value, there's a change to by embossing on the normal product label, imprinting on the normal product label. In the fifth instance of amendment, in section 1529, the first sentence of the section changes the word may to shall to reflect legislative intent, and in the newly designated section 2 of the section, in the second sentence, the may also becomes shall. In the seventh instance of amendment, section 1532B9, the word producer standing alone is amended to producer responsibility organization, a Scrivener's error. In the eighth instance of amendment, section 1533B, this section has to do with the requirement that every 5 years the PRO must conduct an independent third-party audit of the stewardship plan, and the suggested change is a clarification. It is to remove after approval by the Secretary and to add a new last sentence. The Secretary shall approve the audit results, all as part of the every 5-year PRO independent third-party audit, and the redemption rate of the beverage containers included in the audit. In the 14th instance of amendment, in section 7, systems analysis in subdivision 2, the words bottle bill appear twice, and the recommended change is to use the words beverage container redemption. And now on to 2 brand new subsections recommended by the House Ways and Means Committee. In the second instance of amendment to 10 VSA section 1, section 1522 is added a new subsection 3. This is a new exemption from the beverage container redemption system for alcoholic beverages permitted to be shipped direct to consumer under 7 VSA, and 7 VSA deals with alcoholic beverages, and section 277, which deals with malt, Venus, and ready-to-drink spirits with a consumer shipping license. In the 10th instance of amendment, after section 1535, which is on page 893, will appear the new 10 VSA section 1, section 1536, antitrust conduct authorized. This new section would allow manufacturers, a group of manufacturers, or a producer responsibility organization, when implementing or participating in an improved collection planned under this chapter, to be immune from liability under state law to the extent the conduct is reasonably necessary to comply with the producer responsibility organization, except that agreements among them cannot affect the price of the beverage containers and cannot affect the geographic area in which the beverage containers can be sold or the consumers to whom the beverage containers can be sold. And now on to a section recommended by the House Ways and Means Committee that adds parameters to the bill back section envisioned by the bill. In the 6th instance of amendment, 1531G is struck. The intent behind G, which is a bill back so that the PRO reimburses the Agency of Natural Resources for all oversight costs, that intent remains. But there are parameters offered by Ways and Means, to wit, 1, the Secretary of ANR annually provides an estimate of the costs of overseeing the program, including staff costs, compliance, and oversight. 2, the PRO has 30 days to comment, and ANR must respond and may make changes to its budget as a result of the PRO's comments, and the General Assembly sees all comments and responses. And 3, reimbursement of costs to ANR will be subject to the state budgeting process, and the PRO only reimburses the agency's cost if those costs are approved as part of the agency's budget. In the 9th instance of amendment, Section 1534C was recommended to be stricken entirely so that the automatic escalator from 5 to 10 cents for container redemption upon failure to meet collection goals no longer would go into effect. Instead, on July 1, 2025, and every 5 years thereafter, the Secretary of ANR would submit a written report to the House Environment and Energy Committee, House Ways and Means, Senate Finance, and Senate Natural Resources and Energy with the Vermont container redemption and a recommendation whether to increase the beverage container rate in order to increase the redemption rate. In the 11th instance of amendment, we strike out Section 1530C1 and Sections 2 and 3 entirely with a new Section 2-2 to 3A. In Section 2, 1530C1, on January 1, 2026, on a quarterly basis, the deposit initiators remit to the Department of Taxes the abandoned beverage container deposits. The Commissioner of Taxes deposits the first $3 million to the Clean Water Fund, with any excess retained by the Producer Responsibility Organization to implement the requirements of the redemption system. Section 3, 1530C1, on January 1, 2027, the state collects the first $4 million of escheats, which will go to the Clean Water Fund, with any additional escheats retained by the PRO. Section 3A, 10 VSA, Section 1530C1, on July 1st, 2031, the state again collects all revenue from the escheats, with the first $4 million to the Clean Water Fund, and with, in Section 1388, the remainder of the Solid Waste Management Assistance account of the Waste Management Assistant Fund. In the 12th instance of amendment, all of Section 510 VSA Section 1388 is stricken in its entirety, and a new Section 5 says again that there's a Clean Water Fund and where the funds will come from for it, including the unclaimed beverage container deposits, the escheats required to be deposited to the fund is required under Chapter 53. As of January 21, 2026, this paragraph is needed because before this date, the escheats went to the Vermont Department of Taxes first. After this date, the first $4 million escheats goes to the Clean Water Fund directly, and the Department of Taxes collects the escheats above $4 million to go to solid waste. In the 13th instance of amendment, in 6618A, the committee recommends striking out 50% of the escheats and replaces that with the escheats allocated as a clean water account under Chapter 53. In the 15th instance amendment are the effective dates. Section 11, 1 to 3 are unchanged from the bill as it came from, the amendment as it came from House Environment and Energy, while 4 to 8 are amended as I explained in the amended sections regarding clean water funding, and 5 with regard to the Waste Management Assistance Fund. The fiscal note can be found on the Joint Fiscal Office website and on the committee page. There are two main fiscal impacts: revenues and costs. First, the revenues. H158 would result in an overall increase to the Clean Water Fund revenues compared to current law. While some escheat revenues would be shared with the Producer Responsibility Organization starting in the middle of fiscal year 2026, the expansion of the beverage types subject to deposit during fiscal year 2027 and going forward would guarantee that the Clean Water Fund would continue to receive escheat revenues that are consistent with or above current law projected revenues. H-158 will result in an increase in Waste Management Assistance Fund revenues starting in fiscal year 2032 and into future years. This increase would be driven by the proposal to allocate 100% of these escheats to the state starting on July 1, 2031. The first $4 million of escheat revenues would continue to go to the Clean Water Fund, and the Waste Management Assistance Fund would receive all other escheat revenues. The Producer Responsibility Organization would no longer retain any escheats. Second are the costs. The Agency of Natural Resources, to estimate the potential number of unredeemed deposits from the new beverage container types, JFO utilized the 2013 report Systems Analysis of the Impact of Act 148 on Solid Waste Management in Vermont. The report contains estimates for the number of non-carbonated, non-alcoholic beverages sold in Vermont yearly. Using the numbers from the report and applying a redemption rate of 75%, JFO estimates that expanding the bottle bill will result in approximately $2.06 million in new deposit escheats per year. And with reallocating escheat revenues, as I explained already. Second, our costs. The Agency of Natural Resources estimates that any new costs incurred can be met with existing resources or through the bill back authority given to ANR in the bill. H-158 would authorize rulemaking for the amended beverage container deposit law and would require ANR to submit a beverage container redemption system analysis report to the House Committee on Environment and Energy, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Energy in January 2025. Per ANR, funds in the solid waste account of the Waste Management Assistance Fund would likely be used to cover the cost of the report. The bill back authority would allow ANR to bill the Producer Responsibility Organization for more costs associated with reviewing application materials and the stewardship plan. Any spending authority of bill back funds would be subject to the annual appropriations process, and ANR estimates that up to one additional full-time equivalent position may be needed to provide oversight of producer responsibility organizations, the cost of which would be billed to the organizations in future years. The committee heard from these witnesses: Deputy Chief Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel, Fiscal Analyst, Joint Fiscal Office, Owner, Family Market Rutland, Director, Waste Management Protection Division, Agency of Natural Resources, Environmental Compliance Officer, Casella Waste Management, Environmental Consultant, the Beverage Association of Vermont, Reporter of the Bill, House Committee on Environment and Energy, Government Affairs Manager, TOMRA, Collections Solutions, President, Vermont Retail and Grocers Association, District Manager, Northeast Kingdom Waste Management District. The bill passed out of committee on a vote of 9-3-0. The committee respectfully requests your support.
And now for the Committee on Appropriations, member from Underhill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Appropriations Committee wants to thank House Environment and Energy for bringing us H-158 and providing us the opportunity to learn more about changes related to the beverage container redemption system. Your House Appropriations Committee made no changes to H-158. Your House Appropriations Committee voted favorably 8-4-0 to approve H-158 as amended by House Environment and Energy and further amended by Ways and Means. We ask for the body's support. Thank you.
Members, at this time, we are going to break for lunch. Please remember that we need to be on the floor to promptly start at 1 p.m. And then the House will come back 10 minutes after the Joint Assembly adjourns. With that, the House will stand in recess until the fall of the gavel.